you're kind of brought up to think that, oh, you have to sacrifice your personal fulfillment for stability. It's all about stability and like making your way up that ladder. And with years, you'll eventually make enough money. And when you retire, you can figure out what it is that fulfills you. So I think it was really unlearning that belief that wasn't mine, that I somehow inherited along the way, and realize that actually freedom, connection, and alignment with my own purpose matters way more than any of that.
Welcome to Relaunch to a Rich Life, the show where powerful stories spark powerful shifts. Today's guest is Rekha Magon, a woman who traded spreadsheets for slow travel and turned a moment of stillness into a movement. She started with an accounting scholarship, climbed the ranks to senior auditor at KPMG, and it was during Bedrest while pregnant with her first child that everything shifted, everything changed. A laptop hanging above her hospital bed and a life-altering idea was born. So now she's reinventing education, rewriting the rules of work-life balance, and helping families live and learn from anywhere in the world. How good does that sound? Rekha's story is bold, she's brilliant, and exactly what you need to hear if you've ever felt the call to do life differently. So let's dive in. Hey, Rekha, how's it going? So glad to have you here.
Thank you, Hilary. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be so much fun. And we discussed this before where, you know, these types of jobs that were very, male dominated. I mean, you look at what you've been able to do with senior auditor at KPMG, a very large, for those that don't know, consulting house. And I was at Oracle, high tech. I am so fascinated with the most significant relaunch that has literally shaped you. And we're going to dive into the twists and turns and the beds that it took you to. So let's go straight away into that and share with us how and what happened during this relaunch.
Sure. I mean, yeah, like you mentioned, I started my career off in the corporate world. KPMG had recruited me really early on within my first year of university. So I worked with them every summer, and then obviously started with them full time after I graduated. And, it was a great job, right? It was well paying, very stable, full of opportunities to climb that corporate ladder. But despite all of that, I think I knew, like, inside myself pretty early on that something just felt off, right? Like I didn't feel like what I was doing with my day lit me up in any way. And I think, things really shift when you get pregnant, or you you think of life really differently when all of a sudden now
Sure
you're
do.
responsible for this other life. So when I got pregnant and I was, like you mentioned, I was put on really strict bed rest very early on. So for basically 5 months straight, I had to lie on an incline. So my legs had to always be higher than my torso. And I had to lay in this position for 5 months. I wasn't allowed to get up to use the bathroom. I wasn't allowed to even sit up to eat a meal. I just had to stay in this position for 5 months straight.
I can't even
And
imagine you being a type A personality, you having this like, it almost is, and I can say this because I had twins and they initially said you're going to be on bed rest. And I thought it was like a death, sentence. Like, what? What am I going to do?
yeah.
But like you had this, like you knew there was 5 months left. And when they told you that, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, I think the first day or two, like it was a shock, and we were like, it was a total shock because we were actually leaving, we were flying to India the next morning, and I wasn't even supposed to see my doctor that day. I actually was really excited to find out if we're having a boy or a girl, and we were around that time, and I was like, before you leave, like, please just see me. I just want to find out, what the sex of the baby is before we leave. So I wasn't even supposed to see my doctor, called her randomly the morning before our flight. So that in itself was such a blessing, because had I not gone to the doctor that day and she not done this test, the baby would have never survived. She said the minute the plane would have landed, I would have gone into labor and lost the baby. So it was a miracle on its own that I even went to see the doctor the day before this flight. And so, here I was all of a sudden told I'm not allowed to, get off bed. And at first, you're scared. Is the baby going to survive? What am I going to do for 5 months? How can I say this? So you kind of get overtaken by fear, right? I would say for the first day or two that's how I felt. And then I realized, oh my God, I still have this like soul inside my body, like this little human that's inside me. So I can either choose to stay in a state of fear and let that influence the baby, or I can change my consciousness, make this the best opportunity of my life, and turn it to gratitude. So I kind of I think because I was pregnant, it motivated me to just change my mindset right off the bat so that this innocent baby wasn't taking on any negative or fearful thoughts. So, and then from there on, everything just changed. Like I let myself kind of wallow for a day or two, watch some Netflix. And then I was like, okay, I'm done. Like we're going to shift this around. So my husband and my brother were these tech guys back then. So they found this like laptop stand that hung from the ceiling. And there I was, for 5 months with this laptop hanging over my head. I knew I wasn't being lit up, by being an auditor. And I said, okay, this is my opportunity. The universe, I probably wasn't listening to the signs before that were coming my way. And now here I am with 5 months with nothing to do but a laptop over my head to really figure out, hey, what am I meant to be doing, with this life? And then that's when I was on Bedrest is when I developed my first company. So it's called the Mindful Scholar. I to give you some context, I was brought up in this environment where I grew up with a lot of travel, a lot of mindfulness and community service as an upbringing. And I knew how deeply that shaped who I was and who I was becoming as a child. So I wanted to create that same kind of rich and intentional childhood for my own children. So I started off with this mindfulness company. And this was before mindfulness was a thing. So my first company was a mindfulness platform that brought social and emotional learning to public school system. That company went on to, win Canada's 9th EdTech Innovation Award. And the momentum really kind of launched me into the world of, I would say, impact-driven entrepreneurship and like how fulfilling that is to work on something that, makes a difference in other people's lives. So that was going
Rekha,
amazing.
let's talk about this because you're on bed rest. You've got your computer over your head, and you, what did you do? In today's world, you could go ahead and tap into AI, and you get prompts, and it could help you. Well, this is the type of company you should be starting, but you didn't have that. And what did you do to kind of narrow it down? So for those that right now are thinking about maybe starting a business or maybe relaunching into a different type of venture, how did you approach this?
Good question. I guess honestly, at that point when I was like, I think I for a while I didn't know what I wanted to do up until that point. Like I kind of struggled. I knew I didn't want to do auditing or accounting anymore, but I didn't have a clear message on what it is I could do instead. And that was one of my biggest struggles. And honestly, looking back now, I personally feel like the universe forced me to lay in bed for 5 months and to really like tune in to myself and tune in to like that inner voice that's telling you what you're meant to be doing, but you're just not tuned in to listen. And that's why I feel like that those 5 months of my life were such a blessing because I needed that experience to tune in and to listen to what I feel like, it was messages from within telling you what you're meant to be doing with your life. To be fully honest, like I think I just needed to slow down. I needed to tune in
I
and
love
I
that you
live
said
to.
tune in 10 times because this is one of my go-to tools that I teach people is how
Mm,
to tune in a four-step process so you can elevate your energy to be able to access that higher self that you were tapped
yes.
into. That is so you're speaking my language, girl. This is so good. But I know
Yeah.
that coming from where you came from, you had to unlearn some things in order to
Mm.
actually build this new life. What exactly would you say that you couldn't carry forward into this new opportunity?
Yeah, I think I had to definitely unlearn, this belief system that's ingrained in us from a young age that success comes from climbing up a corporate ladder and staying in one place and really sacrificing. It's unsaid, but it's really there. People are, you're kind of brought up to think that, oh, well, you have to sacrifice your personal fulfillment for stability, right? It's all about stability and like making your way up that ladder. And with years you'll eventually make enough money, and then when you retire you can figure out what it is that fulfills you. So I think it was really unlearning that belief that wasn't mine, that I somehow inherited along the way. And realize that actually freedom, connection, and alignment with my own purpose matters way more than any of that. So I think it was also a process of kind of like releasing guilt, because
Mm,
at least as a woman, I don't know if as a woman or maybe everyone feels like this, but sometimes when you prioritize your own joy, um, you feel guilty, or I felt guilty at least. Like, why am I shouldn't be prioritizing my own joy. And I think another challenge that I had to overcome in my own mind was the idea that parenting and professional ambition are mutually exclusive. Like, like you're either an amazing parent or you have an amazing career. Like you can't, those two things cannot overlap.
hmm.
And then obviously just with entrepreneurship, trusting that doing something differently won't necessarily lead to failure, but can lead to fulfillment.
So it's interesting as you said that because there was that moment then after 5 months. That's a huge accomplishment, right? And you have this baby. And what happened then? I mean, what did you do? Did you immediately just go back into your company? Did you take some time off? What was going through your head as you're thinking about the next part of your relaunch?
Yeah. So once the baby was born, it was like crystal clear. Like I wasn't going back to the corporate world. Like
Mhm.
I was gonna go full fledged with this startup. But it also was like crystal clear to me that like I'm a mom and an entrepreneur. Like they're not two separate identities. There, it's one. And for me, at least, especially at that point, like mom was number one. So like I was building a mindfulness company, but when he was really young, my number one priority was to be mindful to my child, right? And to what my child needed. So I always put that first. And then like, okay, whatever else needed to be built out for the company came. And it came really naturally, right? Because I think I merged the two.
Mm.
And that was really powerful. And it was funny though, like so, it was he was small, was building this company. Everything was going great. It was getting these awards. And, he went off to kindergarten, right? So he started kindergarten and, um, it wasn't anything I imagined. Like here I thought I'm solving education by building a tool that's going to go into the education system and like help it. I
Mhm.
very quickly realized that, oh, wait a minute, like within a few weeks, I'm like, oh, the education system, I felt, didn't just need another tool. It felt like it needed to be rebuilt from the ground up. That was my experience the minute he started kindergarten.
Mm.
And, but I kind of like, it's like, okay, that's what I feel. But again, wasn't trusting my gut, wasn't listening to that inner voice, and just kept, pushing through. My company was doing great. I was winning these awards. And it's funny. He was probably like 5 or 6, and one night he was about to go to bed, and I find kids really open up in those like quiet moments where
It's
they're
so
just about to
true.
fall asleep. And I thought he was sleeping, and he turned over to me like 20 minutes later, And out of nowhere, he was like, Mama, my what did he say? My heart and soul keep asking me, when will Mama start homeschooling me? And I remember being like,
No way.
and I was like, say what now?
Yeah.
Like,
I'd be like, who are you?
yeah, and it really, like, I remember I didn't sleep that entire night because I was like, here I felt like, honestly, I felt like a bit of a hypocrite. I was like, here I am building mindfulness solutions for kids all around the world.
Mm.
And I'm not even being mindful of what my own child needs at this moment. And, and I saw literally that night, like I paused everything. I went, and I'm not the type of person that goes really deep into rabbit holes. So like I went through this deep rabbit hole of like homeschooling and what are the curriculums out there, and how do you do it? And then I was still chicken, I didn't pull him out of school right away. I would kind of like cheat the system. So I would like pretend he was sick for a week and test out one curriculum, then send him to school again for another month, and then pull him out another week and test out a different curriculum. And because I was too scared to like rip off the Band-Aid right then and there. But then after like a good 6 to 9 months, I decided to pull him out and went full into homeschooling. And he basically became like my petri dish, right? Where we tested every curriculum from Waldorf to the Finnish system to Reggio Emilio. And I just kind of started figuring out what worked, what didn't work, and how you could really educate in a completely new way. And, the more I did that, the more I also felt like, why I started questioning or being inspired by the idea that education, community, family,
Mm.
and global living, because when you start homeschooling, you can travel and go wherever you want and educate from wherever you want. All of that can actually really come together beautifully to give families a much richer and more connected way of living. And, with time, that vision just became much more louder than my fear.
Something that's really interesting is that you really are changing the face of education. And one of the things that I've done in the past is I had a company that was an internet safety company to keep kids safe online. It's kind of early on. And I had to go into a lot of schools, see how the internet and social was playing a part. There's laws to keep kids off of certain sites just to keep them, safe. But for you, you had this opportunity to homeschool your child. So firsthand, you're seeing what is really working, what is not. And once you created that, when you knew like, oh my gosh, this is really impacting my son, what did you do? What was the next part of, okay, now where do I take this? How do I, it's not just my son, but how do I now open it up to the masses?
Yeah, so initially, after I started homeschooling, I helped launch a learning center in Montreal with some other homeschool moms that were working on a project. So that was kind of like the first doorway to bringing it to more kids than just my own. And then my now business partner and the CEO of Boundless, he approached me and he's like, "Hey, Rekha, I have this idea, and I feel like you're already kind of living the lifestyle. You're traveling, you're educating your kids, why don't we make this kind of lifestyle more, accessible to families around the world?" So him and I started, we, found another co-founder, and we just went all in. It was, it was just like, okay, we're going to make this happen. And within, 6 to 9 months, we launched our first location.
So are you seeing that this is kind of the direction? Are you seeing a lot more families are homeschooling? I know COVID, for sure, people started to go in that direction, but now that we're, a few years out, what are you seeing now, and where do you hope that this continues to go?
Yeah, I think COVID honestly was one of those moments in time where parents, for the first time, got a front row seat to what education actually looks like for their children. And, I think it was also one of the first times where they noticed that, hey, my kids are not actually that engaged in like what they're learning. And like, there's really this lack of love for learning, lack of engagement. There's no personalization. It just felt like they're on this conveyor belt. But with the divide between family and education, there's few opportunities where you get to actually see and feel that. So I look at COVID as really the starting point, I think, of a movement where parents started to want something different, not only for education and for how their kids learn, but also for how they live their lives as a family, right? Like, are they tied to one location for 18 years of their life until their child graduates from high school, or through COVID, people then could work from anywhere and their kids could technically go to school from anywhere. So that's actually when we launched Boundless, was during COVID. And it was amazing to see how many people came out. And then it's almost like an addictive lifestyle. Once you start living this way and you're free to live in any of the countries that we're in and move to another one and continue your child's education without any disruption, it's really hard to go back to a traditional lifestyle where you're just kind of on that conveyor belt. So I think COVID was definitely had a huge impact in starting this kind of movement of digital nomad families. And now I think it's taking off. I mean, we launched, it's only been 3 years. And we've had over 1,000 families register with our programs. We're at 7 different locations, fully operational, selling out, like much earlier than we anticipated. So I definitely think there's, this is a growing movement and only will continue to grow.
What do you think the percentage of homeschooled kids is versus kids that are going to an actual school? Not an actual school, but a school that they are going, out of the home into a school.
Yeah, I don't know that percentage off the top of my head, to be honest, but what we do see is, and it's beyond just homeschoolers as well, right? There's a lot of families. I think there's a huge percentage of families, especially in the States, that are doing online school, right? So they're still registered with a full-on school, but they're, again, not stuck to one location. And I think there's a lot of models coming out, like ourselves as well, that are hybrid models, so you're integrating some academic services from different organizations, and then still having that in-person education. I think there's a lot of new models coming out, and even organizations like ourselves, we're more than halfway through being accredited, right? So we're no longer considered a homeschool program. We will be considered a fully worldwide recognized educational system that families can plug in and out of. So I think, with more, entrepreneurial spirit coming into the education space, which it wasn't really there in the past, there are a lot of new models, a lot of new ways to educate that are coming to the surface and now being fully accredited. So
how old is your son right now?
My son just turned 13.
Okay. And so you said now you're looking to get accredited. How does your son, if he continues to be homeschooled until the time that he graduates, and if it's not accredited, how does he, if he wants to follow it up with additional education, do you keep homeschooling him through college, university? Is it at that point you're kind of like, where does it go from there?
Well, so actually in Boundless Life, we just this year, because my son turned 13, we launched a middle school program. So this was the first time we've always serviced kids 1 to 12. As of this year, we launched a middle school program. So it was actually a traveling middle school program. We accepted 20 students from around the world. They registered with us for a year, and the entire group moved to 3 countries. So we started off in Bali for 3 months. The whole group moved to Cedos for 3 months, and now we're all here in Montenegro for 3 months. So same group of teenagers.
And their parents, or just the teenagers?
And their parents. No, and their parents, the whole family.
Wow,
and we had a moving educator that followed this group across the 3 countries. And it's been incredible. And what we did for this program, and what we'll continue to do as we grow, is we partnered, like I mentioned, with an online accredited school. So the English, math, and sciences are being done in our academic studios through a third party that has, all the accreditation and it's fully recognized. And then what we focus on during what we call Boundless Discovery Hours is project-based units that really focus on soft skills, executive functioning, competencies. How can kids communicate properly? How can they be problem solvers? How can they, be effective researchers and do design thinking? So really kind of focusing on those soft skills that I believe is what's going to make a huge difference in this kind of unknown future that we're all stepping into, so that they get the best of both worlds. They get this hybrid model of top-notch academics and then as well as project-based and personalized place-based learning. So they're learning from all of the amazing countries that we're in.
Well, and that also, when you tie in AI to that, into the curriculum, it's amazing where this can go, especially with the hands-on in countries. Like you said, 3 different countries. That's incredible. How are you seeing AI is impacting what you're working on with Boundless Life?
Yeah, AI is amazing. I think the way we look at AI is we look at it as a tool, right? So like, how can we use AI to not only empower children to use it as an effective tool, but even our staff members, right? So we use a platform that allows um, educators to see where there are learning gaps in different children's learning using AI, and then those learning gaps are you're able to fill those learning gaps through AI. Because one thing that's always gotten me is any parent who has more than one child will tell you that their 2 children, even though they're brought up with the same parents, the exact same environment, are completely different, right? So why is our education system teaching every kid that was born in the same year the exact same way? It's never made sense to me.
It's
If
never made
anything,
sense to me either. And I've got 3 kids and my husband has 2. So we got 5, and they are all so different in terms of
completely
how they
different.
learn.
Exactly. So, in our education centers, not only are our classroom multi-ages, right? So that you're not just being grouped into a group of kids that were born the exact same year as you, but we also make sure that our education is personalized so that you're
Mhm.
really meeting every kid where they're at and not teaching to the age, but teaching to the ability.
That's where it has to go, right? Because we put 30 kids into one classroom, and all different educational levels. They all have different ways of learning. I know my daughter is an auditory learner, like 95%. So when she hears something, she remembers it. But if she's reading it, it doesn't, unless she reads it out loud or can kind of pretend in her mind that she's reading it so she hears it, it doesn't sink in. And then I've got my son who is opposite. Like, just give him the hardcore numbers and let him look at something. So things, I really believe, and again, having a company in this space, it's such a slow roll though. Why does it take so long to change this academic process? What do you think is the real reason, and what are you doing to try to speed it up a bit?
I think it takes so much time because I think our society is very fear based.
Mm.
People are scared of change, they're scared of trying something new. Um, I think the first thing is mindset has to be shifted. Like every other industry has changed, but education is still built, was built during the Industrial Revolution. It hasn't changed, right? We're still treating kids like they're factory workers in a factory, and it doesn't make sense. So I think you almost need like people that are a little bit crazy to like jump in and try something just radically new. And with time, we are gathering the stats and the data to show that this different approach to education, I believe is 10 times more impactful. Like the
100%.
amount of resilience and adaptability that you see just you innately get by just living a lifestyle like this. Forget even the education itself, just the lifestyle, of like immersing yourself in a Balkan country. Like we just got here 3 days ago, and it's like, it's so different than any other country
And
we've
how
lived in.
great
And
for
we've lived
you
in
too.
many countries.
This is the
Yeah.
greatest part. It's not just for your student, it's for you, it's for your husband. It's like, wow, I can't even imagine, the
It's
family unit as you learn things
oh,
together, as you learn the
it's
cultural.
it is honestly, as for a family, I think it is the most beautiful experience.
Yeah.
At least it has been for ours, because
Yeah.
you're taking yourselves out of your comfort zone, right? Like back in, we're from Montreal, born and raised, both my husband and I. And my parents are 5 minutes down the street. His parents are 5 minutes down the street. Our siblings are there. Our entire we have an amazing community, and I love them to death, But to pull yourselves out of that comfort zone of everything that you know and just dive into the unknown, the amount of connections that makes between your family unit of like trying to figure out how to buy
Mm.
groceries when everything's in Greek or everything's in
Mhm.
Italian, or you're trying to work the washing machine for the first time that you have there's no instructions in English, like those shared new experiences as a family brings you together in such a deep way that you cannot experience, I think, when you're back in your own environment, so it's been truly a blessing, even just for our own family.
I'm right now reading a book, and it's called The Comfort Zone: Create a Life You Really Love with Less Stress and More Flow.
Mm.
And it talks about, it's Kristen Butler. And it is so fascinating because it really discusses this whole concept of what excitement, interest, the more you can get out of comfort, the more you can get to a place where you're like excited and your brain is lighting up. You learn more. You continue to have that like quantum leaping. So I think it's
Mm.
incredible. Now, as we're wrapping up here, where can people find out more about you?
So, I mean, to find out more about Boundless, you would go to our
Yeah,
website,
about you,
yeah,
about your
Boundless,
mission,
yeah,
about Boundless Life.
Boundless Life. It's boundless.life is our website, www.boundless.life. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn. You can find us anywhere. The website will give you a lot of information. And if you're interested from the website itself, you can book a discovery call with anyone from our family sales rep, and they will walk you through, what our programming looks like and what's available across the globe.
And so if there are people out there saying, wow, are my kids too old now? You said you were doing middle school. Is there high school? Are there programs that you can keep moving all the way until they're going off to college, university?
But right now, we're focused on, we can serve ages 1 to 14.
Okay.
So we just launched the middle school, which is 13, 14, with the partnerships that we're working on currently, in terms of like the hybrid model. We are signing partnerships with online schools that service all the way up to high school so that we can continue to
Keep
grow
it going.
and, yeah, keep classes, with time, add classes for the older ages as well. But we really believe in quality, so we've already grown really quickly in a short amount of time. So we just want to make sure that every new thing we do it properly. We take our time and we, iron out all the kinks before we open up the next classroom.
Well, and I also think with your son, as he ages up, there might be some high school type of program
Yeah.
entering into your world. I just have this feeling. But anyway, this has been fascinating. It's so interesting, and you so eloquently talk about it in something that usually can be very confusing. And so many people don't know the alternatives and some of the options that are out there. So again, for those that are like, you know what, this might be something good. Maybe it's a niece, nephew, relative. Share this because it is. And I've seen it firsthand with some of my friends who did this. The kids are off the chart, like experienced and balanced. And it really does end up impacting not only the child, but also the family unit. So I admire you so much. And you know what? The silver linings, the fact that, you had to be in bed for 5 months. I mean, it was a really incredible relaunch for you and for the thousands that you've helped getting into this. So anything that you want to share, last thought as we end our show?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say thank you. This was a really, really nice conversation. Um, you know, the way I look at it is we're not just about traveling, right? We're really about rewriting the script for modern family life, right? How can families live? And to us, it's about building this ecosystem that nurtures learning and fosters really deep friendships with people from around the world. And most importantly, you know, creates an environment where families can be fully present, right? I don't think I think in this day and age, the thing people need the most is to not have to choose between, you know, growing your business or working and togetherness. I think there are models like ourselves and others out there that create an ecosystem where you can have it all. You can be fully present with your family and still work and still send your kids to school. So I think, yeah, just final thoughts is
Amazing.
trying to unite the world more than separate it.
Rekha Magon, thank you for being on Relaunch to a Rich Life. What a great show and so informative. And I think that we all needed to understand direction of, possibilities of where education can take you, no matter what you're doing. So thank you again for being here. And until next week, everyone, relaunch into your next best self and think about what are your possibilities? How are you going to get out of your own comfort zone? We'll talk to you again next week.